Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to see all of you. I see we have maybe a few more people who are just popping in, so I'll slowly start to welcome everyone in. So today, for our conference and for our brainstorming session, we're going to be talking about how we can create community, physical in-person community, after 2+ years of being virtual. It's a little ironic considering we are all virtual right now, but hopefully we can get some good thoughts going, because this is a current problem. This isn't something that's in the past that we can look back on. This is a group of wonderful minds that can think together on ways to build community for whoever you are a part of and who you're serving. So to get us started off, we're going to go ahead and I am going to make us do a round robin. I am sorry, but also not sorry, because this is about community building. So for this round robin, I would love everyone to introduce themselves, just saying their name. If you are comfortable with giving your pronouns, please give your preferred pronouns, and then tell me your favorite dinosaur. And I will go ahead, and because we have so many folks, I am just going to call people out instead of having everyone choose someone else. That is too much. So I will go ahead and start. My name is Jessica. I prefer she, her, hers pronouns, and I really love the Spinosaurus. It's my favorite dinosaur. So we are going to go ahead and go to, let's see, Brittany.
I'm Brittany Bernier. I use she, her pronouns, and my favorite dinosaur is the Triceratops.
Go ahead, Karen.
Karen Jepson-Innes from WonderLab Museum, she, her, hers, Triceratops.
And then Ella as well, if Ella is with you.
Ella Heckman, WonderLab Museum. My favorite dinosaur is a raptor.
Okay. Debbie.
My name is Debbie Ray, and my favorite dinosaur is a baby dinosaur.
Lovely. Cam Edwards.
Yeah, I'm Cam Edwards. He, his, him. And my favorite dinosaur is probably a pterodactyl. I always wanted to fly.
Cassidy.
Hi, I'm Cassidy. I use they, them pronouns, and I love dinosaurs. My favorite one is specifically Sue, the T-Rex from the Field Museum, if anyone's been there. I love Sue. So.
Absolutely. Colleen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Colleen Yackel. I use she, her pronouns, and I am pro Stegosaurus.
Debbie. Maybe, yeah.
Yes, hi. So yeah.
Oh,
Debbie
I'm sorry, Debbie.
Yeah, that's okay. I thought you liked my response so much.
I did.
Me again. Okay.
We have more and more people popping in. Thank you for doing it again. Much appreciated. Denise, did we get you? Maybe Denise. Let's do just a few
Denise
more.
is typing captions for our meeting.
So
so
understood,
she might be
captioner. Got
preoccupied.
it.
Yeah.
Elizabeth.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I am a pterodactyl fan.
Okay. Travis.
Hey, I'm Travis Rappin. I gotta go with T-Rex.
Awesome. And then Georgia. If you're there. Let's see. Perhaps not. Okay.
Georgia loves the raptor.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for doing that with all of us and with me. I know that might have felt a little silly, but there's a reason why I did it, and we'll go into that in a little bit. So what is WonderLab? WonderLab, if no one has gone to it before, if you maybe are a little bit unfamiliar, is a science museum in Bloomington, Indiana. We focus on technology, sciences, and health. We are a 501c3 and we're dedicated to the ageless process of learning. So learning at any age possible, because you can learn at any age. We have 2 floors of exhibits, including sciences like physics and chemistry, engineering, biology. I have a couple of pictures here of what our bottom floor and our top floor look like. So my name is Jessica McKinney. For those who are just popping in, I'm the education manager at WonderLab, which means that I get to design and implement most of the programming that goes on in WonderLab. So our largest audience at WonderLab are going to be families with children aged infant to early elementary, but we do provide programming and experiences for all ages. Like I said, ageless process of learning is incredibly important at WonderLab. So I'm going to go ahead and pose an issue that I have been facing and perhaps some of you have also been experiencing. Once we moved back from virtual to in-person, I found it very difficult to build back a community that we once had. So for some background, let me describe what happened when COVID at first occurred. So it was spring 2020. WonderLab, I was not there at the time, but they really rapidly changed all of our in-person programming. We had quite a few from in-person to virtual. We also created new virtual programs to provide as much programming as possible to all the kids who are now stuck at home. So our virtual programs were received far and wide. We had them stretching across the United States. We had folks coming in from Canada. We had folks from Poland and India. We had a lot of different people and a lot of different perspectives, and it was a really great time. And about that 1 to 1.5 years, we had excellent virtual programming with high attendance rates. And we still do have virtual programming, just not as much. We're holding on to a few that are just good still that we really enjoy. So Science Storytime was a virtual program created during this time where we would pick a book, any book possible that was a picture book, and we would read it. It's not sciencey at all. That's what you think when you first read it. But the person who was doing the program would then look through that book and say, okay, what activity could I do that is science focused? Maybe there's a rainbow on one page, or maybe the whole thing is discovering caves and what those might be like. So maybe you're talking about the science of light, or you're talking about bats or animals that don't have sight in caves. And so it worked out really well. We had really strong attendance for this particular virtual program, and we decided to, this is the one program we decided to bring in person that we hadn't had before the pandemic. And so by summer 2021, we were starting to bring programs back, and Science Storytime was one of them. We would do it out in the garden where it was still rather safe. And I have down here the total attendance for September 20, or sorry, for the year of 2022 to date. So January to September. I have in this box here, the average participant number for in-person, which is about 6.5 kids a group, an activity. And then for virtual, we have closer to 10. Those are both great numbers, but what I have experienced is that I will have long periods of times where maybe I just have 2 people come to a program, or I don't have the same people coming back every single time like I do with my virtual program. And so what I would really love to do is figure out a way to build community around science education and around early childhood education. In this time, I also started, it was in March of 2021 when I started, so I was able to see this transition. So just for a better idea, this is the average monthly breakdown of what we saw for Science Storytime in person. Attendance at WonderLab moves cyclically. So when there are large breaks for other people, that's when we have busy times. And so it makes sense in January when many people are on breaks that they would be there. And then once folks get out of school and have more time to take time off, they will start to come to the museum more. And that also means they'll come to in-person programming more. The biggest thing though is how do I and how does the museum create a steady audience for in-person programming? And so I have to consider a few things. I have to consider, what did it used to look like in 2019 before the pandemic occurred? What are we facing now? And then perhaps what are some things that I can start to do? So let's see here. In 2019, I was an intern with WonderLab, so I was able to see what happened. We had the same groups coming in every single week for our early childhood programming. They would come from one program to the next. They would travel in little packs, these families would, where they would meet at programs, and they would build a community themselves of caretakers who were raising infants, toddlers, preschoolers all together. The adults could stay sane, the kids had someone to play with and interact with. And we got to see them all the time. We got to watch them develop both scientifically and just physically. I had recently had a chance to listen to a couple of parents in a program that I was in just discuss this time. And they really talked about how they were able to do this and they miss it. They said that it was really nice to have that type of support network where they could rely on each other, both the adults relying on each other, but the children to rely on each other socially. And that really is super different nowadays because we have some children who are called pandemic babies, which they have never been socialized at all. So they've been stuck at home with their families perhaps, or they just didn't get the exposure to people that they would have if it wasn't a pandemic. And so we're trying to figure out, how do we include those types of people as well? It's multifaceted, the problem that I am facing, and I'm sure the ones that you're facing as well have different issues that you're trying to figure out. I heard from another family with a pandemic baby. She is now 2. She was incredibly surprised, the mother was, that the toddler would play with me. It had been a few times that they had come to science story time, but she was still shocked that she interacted with me at all. And I said, well, this is developmentally appropriate. She said, but you don't understand. She doesn't even smile at people. And I say, okay, yeah, I can see how that would be a surprise then. Let's maybe figure out some ways to support this type of development again. So what's different than now? Before, we had very strong, thriving communities of people who would interact outside of the museum. Now we have fragmented groups and families who are just trying to bring their kids back up to speed and are trying to learn how to socialize themselves again. Communicating is a little bit harder now, and building community is also rather difficult. We've kind of forgotten how to do that. And so the current model that I have when I create a program centers around core science concepts and hands-on activities. That's what I do, that's my job. But I need to start to incorporate more than just that. As a teacher, I need to also consider socio-emotional development. And I need to consider, how can I create a space for guardians to interact, and how can I create a space for children to interact appropriately? So what does the research say? I did a little bit of research about this. I wasn't able to find too terribly much when I went to journals and articles that were professionally published, but I did find some just from news articles and thought pieces and things like that. And so we have one author here, Tony Salina, who was talking mainly about how do we bring back community in school systems, which very different from WonderLab, but still applies. He considered that the basis of education and community has deteriorated due to the pandemic. So we don't know how to do it anymore. We don't know how to communicate perhaps, or we have a hard time building community, even though at one point it might have been easy for us. And some children haven't even gotten that chance to learn how to build community. So Selena suggests that to build back a community, we need to emphasize relationships, belonging, and wellness. So in my case, how I could do this is to interact with the groups that come in before I actually start my program. It might sound very obvious, saying, hi, hello, how are you? What's your name? How old are you? What's your favorite dinosaur? But it can actually be pretty hard. That's not the first thing that I think about, at least. And so it's just getting our minds back into this area of how can I welcome someone in? How can I make them feel comfortable? Typically what I think about is, okay, how can I keep these kids interested? It's not, how can I get them in a space where they want to play with other children? How can I get adults in a space where they feel comfortable talking to each other? And so if we get families talking, they will have opportunities to build their own social support networks around their kids and around education. And so that way we can try to start to bring them back to what it used to be, or at least something that looked like that. We also have something from author Catherine Reynolds Lewis. She goes into a lot of detail in this slide, or in this article, I'm sorry. Whoops, in this article. Oh my goodness. Okay, there we go. That talks about how to form mutual connections. And when I read through it, I was like, gosh, yeah, obviously you ask someone what they like, and then based off of that, you build a community. If you like the same things they do, you're gonna like them. But it also isn't that obvious. At least I personally didn't think about it when I was considering how do I build community in my educational programming. And so Catherine Reynolds Lewis states that a core foundation of community is having some form of mutual connection, whether it's loving dogs, painting, motorbike, racing, like whatever it could be. If I put myself in the shoes of my program families, I can consider what might their mutual connections be. Maybe they just want to get out of the house. Maybe they are really interested in STEM learning at a young age, or maybe they just really enjoy WonderLab and science, or they want to meet new people. All those mutual connections I can build off of to encourage a community space that is larger than just scientific education. So I got a little bit skipped ahead, but you might have already seen, here's next steps. Oh my goodness, it's doing it again. Love that for me. There we go. So for next steps, what could I potentially do just with the little bit of information I have found? I can go ahead and implement what I've learned. I can start to introduce myself, but also ask other people's names. If I learn those names, they're going to say, oh, wow, you remember me? And we can continue to develop those relationships. So I've also learned that folks really want to get back in touch, but it's just difficult. It can be hard for some. There's a lot of emotional and social things that have occurred in the past 2 years. It might be really difficult for some people to even get out of the house. And so it's just creating an open and inviting space for them to come to you when they're ready, but making sure that they know that there's always a space for them. It can be incredibly difficult, especially for our younger children, if you do work with them. There's been many reports done about how kids are not at particular milestones they're supposed to be at just because of the pandemic, which brings up a whole other points of should we really be measuring them if they have lived through this experience that not many of other people have. So I know that I can play a role in connecting families and kids together based on their interests, on their lived experiences, and what they want out of my programs. I just have to try a little bit harder to bring that community together by being open and being welcoming. I can also consider my other coworkers and the other functions at WonderLab. Maybe my marketing team can help with marketing programs a little bit differently. Instead of just saying, these are just science hands-on activities, maybe I can have them say, hey, do you need a group of adults that have kids too? And you just need adults in your life who know these same experiences that you're going through. Come to WonderLab, we can provide that for you, but also your kids will be entertained while you chat with them. Or maybe there are certain volunteers who'd be able to help me from the volunteer department. Maybe there are donors that we go to quite often who are interested in this and can support us in some way. There are many ways I can go about this, but personally, I know that if I make some small changes, I might be able to do a lot of good. So at this point, I would like to ask if there are any questions before we move on to our own brainstorming. And if you have a question, feel free to type it in the chat at any time. You can also raise your hand physically, or there is a reaction button as well that is raising your hand. Let's just give 1 second for that. Oops. Okay. So before I move on, I'll just give it one more moment and I'll continue to fill the silence because I love to do that. And I will say that this talk is definitely more free-flowing. It's more open because I don't really have the answers, and I don't feel like many people do at this current point, because it's something that we're facing right now. For those who came in a little bit later, perhaps, this is a problem that I'm facing, and maybe you're facing as well in your organization. It might not be in the educational program realm, but maybe it is your volunteer group is diminished and you don't know how to bring them back, or how can you get interns in, or how can you make your coworkers feel more like a team again after coming back from work at home, things like that. And so I would like to use the rest of this time to talk about it together. We can either work individually and come back as a main group, or we can do breakout sessions. I think we'll go ahead and start individual and perhaps move to breakout sessions so you have more chance to speak. But what I would like you to do, if you'd like to do this activity, is consider your own issue. If you are facing something either at work, volunteer world, just personally, and how you want to build community, these are some questions that might help you. What is your community? If you can define that, that always does help things. Considering what did it used to be like and what would you like it to be now? And then how might you get it there? Is it as simple as just asking things like, what's your favorite dinosaur? What's your favorite color? Which are things that I get to do as someone who educates mainly 6-year-olds and under. It's great. But perhaps it's a little bit more complex for you, and we can talk through those as a larger group or in breakout rooms. Who can help you make your community into something that you want it to be? And what common interest or presence in that community that might help bring people together? Maybe you really like block parties, and that is something you can go off of, or you really enjoy gardening, things like that. So go ahead and just take a little bit of time. You can either just write it down or think about it. I'm not going to tell you how to brainstorm, but just with these initial questions, consider how can you build back community in your own situation? We'll get a little bit of time for that. I will also be here if you have any questions, but I'm going to be assigning breakout rooms. So, let's see.
I have a question for you, Jessica.
Of
Have you
course.
noticed any difference in the age groups that are coming in? Like you said, that preschoolers have had 2 years of no socialization, as opposed to kids who are 9, 10 years old. I didn't know if that made a difference with who is now coming in.
Yeah, that is a good point. At least from what I have seen, we have still had a pretty average amount of students or kids who are still 6 and under. So we have a large group that are still that, and then it starts to trickle off the older the kiddo gets. I do have some coworkers in this Zoom call that might be able to say a little bit better, but I'm pretty sure we still actually do have the same people. Oh, there's Nell. Nell, do you agree?
Yes. So part of that has to do with school, who's at home throughout the day. That is primarily younger children who aren't yet in school. I think what we're noticing is less that the ages of the children are changing, and more that their developmental abilities have changed a little bit, so that they're just a lot of the really young kids are still just trying to figure out how to interact with other people that they don't know very well. And so you do see some of that, but I will say that there are some positive things happening. I think we're seeing more interaction between kids, both between children and between children and adults they're not familiar with. So I've had several interactions with kids who have just run right up to me and like started talking to me, which was something that we didn't see as much for a little while. I will also say that there are groups that used to come very, very frequently that we don't see anymore. Whether they're because their kids have sort of aged to a point where they're in school all day or because they got a different routine, we're seeing fewer of the families who we knew before and more families who sort of joined us during the pandemic or are starting to come now.
And I do feel like that is just another cyclical process at WonderLab. It tends to happen where if you have one family who's coming from a child's very early age, maybe all the way up to 6 or 7, you will start to see them drop off more just because of school, but perhaps also because that child's interests have turned to other things and other activities. But I think we've had a little bit of time now to think about it individually. I'm going to assign breakout rooms. It'll be around 4 to 5 people per room, and I will try to pop in. Just what I'd like you to do in these breakout rooms is to consider your own issue if you do have one, and then use that time to collaborate together. This is just an area or a space to talk out what you're dealing with and perhaps get a perspective that is outside of anything that you are currently dealing with. So I'm going to create those now, and I'm going to open up our rooms. So go ahead and click on those. I'll make sure everyone has gotten into one. And if you feel like this isn't a time where you can use a breakout room, that is totally okay as well. Just have maybe one more person. Or two, 1 or 2 more people. Okay. Nick, I'm gonna go ahead and start to pop into rooms just to see if they need any help.
Okay, I'm also gonna say to people if they want to have captions to join the main room.
Ah, very true. Thank you. Okay, I will make
So
sure that that happens.
I just broadcast that message to everybody, so hopefully they know that like they can leave and join the main room. We can talk through things here.
Thank you so much, Nick.
You're welcome.
12:45. Ah, this silly machine. Okay. Stop sharing. There we go.
Would you be able to put the like question for prompting discussion in the chat?
Can you say it one more time?
Would you be able to put like in the chat like the questions for
Oh,
the
sure.
discussion?
That's a great idea. Let me pull that up.
Yeah. You might have to do that like in each room since you wouldn't be able to have a chat for everybody, but
Shucks. Okay. Chat. Here, I've direct messaged you. Would you be able to broadcast?
yeah, I can broadcast it, but the broadcast goes away. So what I can do, I can pop into all the rooms and put the discussion questions there if you want me to.
Mm.
So
I'll go ahead and okay.
Or if you want to just go into those rooms and you can put it in the chat there.
Yeah, I could certainly do that. Okay, I'm going to go into room 1.
And Jada and Eric, are you around?
Looks like most of everyone is coming back in. Thank you so much for doing those breakout rooms. I hope that they were beneficial to you. Maybe you met some new people that you would like to get to know outside of this meeting and speak with more. But we are going to go ahead and wrap up. And with that, I need Dana to take it away.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. And thank you, Jessica. That was very informative. And it was, I think the breakout rooms were beneficial to me, I know, and I hope they were to other people as well. We do have all of these sessions, as they've been saying throughout today. They're going to be on the Btcc website. So if you felt like you missed anything, you can visit that. Also, to get to the next session, you can go ahead and I think, Nick, did you put that in the chat too?
Yeah, so to get to your next session, you can click on the link from the one that says main link for the day. But then also there are the feedback links there for this session and also for the full day. But please do give your feedback. It's really helps everybody, and we really appreciate y'all being here. And thank you, Jessica. This was really great.
Thank you all for
Thanks,
coming.
everybody.
And I hope that you can figure out whatever you're focused on and working on.
Thank you so much.
Stop the recording.